all set. All right, so I think we are going to start our meeting tonight. Hopefully Kuljit will join us when he can. So I think we have a quorum. Helen, do we?
Yes, we do. But let me call roll call and just to establish that. So Chair Colcott, Vice Chair McClatchy.
Here.
Commissioner Carres.
Here.
Commissioner Fry.
Here.
Commissioner Callback.
Here.
Commissioner Martin. Commissioner Richmond.
Here.
Okay, so we do have a quorum.
Okay, great. So we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance now. Everybody, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty. So public comments on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any? Do we have any requests to speak? I see we have at least one member of the public here.
Don't see any hands raised from members of the public who are requesting to speak. Oh,
okay.
It looks like Kuljit is joining on.
Good.
Super.
Hey, Kuljit.
You're on mute, Kuljit.
Hello.
Hey, there he is.
So we've taken us through a quorum, and we're glad you're here, and we've done the Pledge of Allegiance. There are no public comments or no hands raised, and now we are ready for you to take us on with the items for consideration and action, and hope all is well.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm getting better. Thank you. Okay, super. So we have I guess we can work on the minutes quickly, but before we get into the budget, I wanted to sort of see how we want to go through that. So that kind of depends upon the order. You know, I mean, it's a lot of material. Are we just going to go through the text that the letter that you presented? So we just sort of go through that, or do people want to, have sort of line item kind of questions that would take much longer?
If I could, Chair, I am planning on, we do have a presentation that we can present. It's actually the presentation that will be presented to the council tomorrow night, but we can go through that. Probably won't go through the entire presentation because the entire presentation includes some discussion of the council's objectives and goals for the coming year. Right. But certainly can go through some of the numbers, and then happy to have the discussion go however you please in terms of asking questions, items like that.
How does the council, the commission feel about it? I mean, do you guys want to have some time to dive into some more line item kind of questions?
Well, this is Gary. I personally don't think we ought to get too deep into the line items unless there's a burning concern. I would suggest we just go through the two quickies. The minutes and the investment report should be fast, I think.
Okay.
Shouldn't it, John? And then do the presentation and kind of go from there. Make it a 1 hour meeting, not a 5 hour meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Good.
That sounds good, Gary.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's fair. I think my approach would be to sort of have the commission focus on the macro issues, kind of the assumptions behind some of the budgeting numbers, etc., and then let the numbers fall with it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's then do it in the same order, and let's start with the minutes.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, great. So motion by Commissioner callback, and then second by Commissioner Frey. So let's do a roll call. Chair Colcat,
I'll abstain. I wasn't here for them.
Vice Chair McClatchy,
Approved.
Commissioner Clares,
Approved.
Commissioner Fry,
Oh, here.
Commissioner Fry,
Approved.
Commissioner Callback,
Approved.
Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Richmond.
Approved.
So motion passes with 5 approved, 1 abstain, and 1 absent.
Okay, super. Okay, next topic, quarterly investment portfolio.
So we don't have a staff report on this, but you have, of course, the report in front of you. And Richard is happy to answer any questions that you might have on the investment report.
I have a question. We have approximately 22% with federal agencies, including Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Is that something we're going to tend to want to get out of? Because it looks like it's paying the lowest interest rate. And I'm terribly concerned about both of those, given what happened in 2008 and that the federal government never recapitalized them. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, from what I read in the report, they were, looks like they were leaning towards, if I remember seeing in that, their assumptions. I'm trying to find that part. In the investment strategy outlook, it was on page 18 of the report. It looked like they're focusing on the treasuries and agencies for the short term. I guess I'm reading it looks like they're reducing the they're gonna very little pickup compared to treasuries. They're likely continue reducing the allocations in favor of other opportunities. It kind of looks like they were trending towards agencies.
Yeah, that's what concerns me is that if you go to page 10, the agencies have the lowest rate.
Right, they do.
And Freddie and Fannie are kind of why I think most of us believe the federal government will back them up. They really haven't fixed them since 2008, and they've been just taking the profits and putting it in the general fund. Correct me if somebody has more recent information. And since we're getting a lower rate return with some perceived risk, and 22% of, I believe it was 22% of our portfolio was in that, I find that concerning.
Yeah, we could talk to them to find out what exactly their longer term recommendations or their strategy is. You know, given a lot of these lower term, you know, U.S. Treasury federal agencies, and we're in there at what 60%, 61% of the portfolio. We could ask them, you know, what their ideas are and throw in some of those. I think it's because of the newer issues of the corporates and negotiable CDs. You know, their change is maybe believe that they're a lower rate, you know, instrument, lower rate return. But we could talk to them definitely about what's.
Yeah,
what's
I would
on.
appreciate that. Most of the federal agency, I said 22%. It looks like it's 20.5, but and I understand that they have to go with short term because we're looking at potential rate increases due to inflation. But it'd be nice to hear some feedback on that.
Yes, definitely. Maybe we could ask them at the for our June
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a note.
I think it highlights the bigger issue, which is the proposal to increase our funding to the pension obligation rather than leave it in a portfolio that's earning, essentially less than inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a committee, we can push that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. That's on our radar to talk about what we could do, what we want to do with that reserve amount that we have for pension. How we want to, get the maximum return out of that reserve, general fund reserve, that we can do something to reduce our unfunded liability or put it into a pension trust. Or that's definitely on our next step of things to do after this budget is adopted.
Okay, so John, I think it's helpful that if you have some better understanding of this thing, I think maybe you can just write a little email back to John, and they can forward that to PFM and Richard. And
yes, yeah, definitely. If that would probably be, that way we could get all of your concerns noted, and then we could definitely pass those along to PFM.
I'd be happy to take that action.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then as Richard says, as they provide us with their quarter ending June report, perhaps they can provide some responses to those and have it for when we bring that report to you.
So would it make sense to have them actually be on the call so we could ask questions?
We can ask if they're available.
Yeah,
I think that would be good, since it's all online anyway.
Sure.
And we probably
once
still
a year
will
at
be.
least, yeah, to have them would be really helpful.
Yeah.
So the lever we have, John, to kind of shift some of this stuff is really the strategy and the percentages that we allow them to be able to invest in certain categories of securities. And so that's the one, I think, that if you feel like that we should have a longer conversation about reducing agencies or et cetera from what you know, and I don't know anything about it, I think that would be the way to actually for us to sort of guide them. Okay.
I'll put together an email, and then they can come back with their answers, and then we can go from there.
And so it doesn't become anything Brown Act. Just send it to John and Richard, and that'll be fine. Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
So are we supposed to approve this, recommending it to the city council, or just see it?
Well, I think you just need to see it. I mean, the city council is just being asked to just receive the report. So they're not going to take any action to approve or reject it. So I think, if you are receiving the report as well,
Good.
Certainly it's an opportunity for you to flag any questions, as has been done. And so I don't think any action needs to be taken.
Good. Okay.
Okay. All right, now this is the interesting part.
Okay. And Helen, if you'll, Chair Calcutt, if you're ready, we can start with the budget. Helen, if you'll stop sharing so I can share mine. And we'll bring up our presentation. And as it's coming up, I really want to thank, I know our staff isn't on, but I really want to thank our staff. I really want to thank Richard and his team for helping pull all of this together in a very, very short amount of time. As I think we have mentioned, we condensed this, whether willingly or unwillingly, by getting a late start on it. But Richard and his team have done a fantastic job of pulling the numbers together. Of course, this is a very preliminary draft budget that is being that we have presented. Of course, it goes to the City Council tomorrow night. Any feedback, questions, concerns that you have tonight, we will note, and we'll note those to the City Council tomorrow night as well, so that they're aware of the conversation that you all have tonight, as well as, know that we are addressing the concerns that you may bring up. I would say for this presentation, if you have questions at any point, let's stop along the way. I think for the City Council, I may not do that. I may go through the entire presentation and then go back to questions. But I think for this group, if you have questions, let's stop and let's look into those. Just very briefly, the way the presentation is structured, we'll talk briefly about the operating budget. We'll look at revenues, expenditures, including the various assumptions for revenues, some of the assumptions for expenditures. We'll look at the CIP, the proposed 5-year CIP. And then the City Council is, like I said earlier, is going to talk about their upcoming priorities, goals, their objectives, and how those will tie into the budget.
So John, can I sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's important for you to set expectations for a timeline.
Okay.
So even before you get into the budget, if the first slide could be about, the fiscal year starts July 1, we're expecting you to review this twice and approve it by a certain date, et cetera.
Okay.
Who else is going to provide input? And even just tell them, that it's a bottoms up, all the departments have looked at it. So they understand that there's been work going on already. And we don't want to repeat what's happened the last few years where the budget doesn't get approved in December.
Okay. We certainly can do that. We'll add a slide.
Just a timeline of
Has a timeline of budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them know who's worked on it already, and the Financial Commission's seen it, all the departments have seen it.
Yeah, great suggestion. Thank you. We'll add that in.
Okay.
Okay. So let's look at the upcoming 2-year operating budget. Now, I want to just set the stage. The budget that is being proposed by staff is what we have internally been calling a base budget. It starts to return us to levels of service of pre-COVID levels of service. And so what we have been using is the FY 18-19 budget as our comparison, as that was our last full fiscal year pre-COVID. 19-20, we started to see impacts from COVID the latter part of the year. So we are proposing a budget that gets us back to those levels of service that we had pre-COVID. We are anticipating that as restrictions are lifted, as more and more folks are getting vaccinated, and we are continuing to see case numbers continue to drop, that we will start to see some return to various activities and functions that we saw before COVID hit. We'll start to see more community events. We will, some of the services that the city provides that were put on hold will start to come back. And so we have built the budget based on what is our base levels of services. So with that said, let's get into some of our assumptions. So for revenues, we are projecting a very modest growth in property tax, 4% in the first year, 3% in the second year. These are, so those of you who have been on the commission for a number of years will recognize these are very low, very conservative estimates. Typically Los Altos sees 7, 8, 9. I think 1 year we saw 12% growth in property tax. We just don't know fully what property tax is going to do in the next couple of years.
And when do we get guidance from the county on that number? Which month? In the past, I think they've been able to tell us that there's a projection, right, that they can do.
Richard? Richard, are you talking right now? Because we can't hear you if you're talking, Richard.
John?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my experience has been, yes, we can check with the county relative to out years. We're working off the numbers we have for this last year going forward, but I agree with you. I think it's something in the next couple of years we need to watch carefully to see if there is any impact on COVID. I doubt for Los Altos you're going to see that, but in some other communities, they may see some COVID impact in terms of reassessments.
Yeah. And one thing I neglected to mention, so I'll mention it now. One thing that we as staff will continually do is continually monitor things like this, projections and whatnot. Certainly at the mid-year, if we're seeing our property taxes coming in higher or lower, we will make those recommendations to make adjustments on that, because you're right, we will be getting projections and estimates from the county, and as we get those, we can have better numbers of what our projections are going to be.
If I was to bet, I would say this is going to be a very strong year for property tax. I think property prices have gone up maybe 10% on the average in the first 4 months of this year. So I think the market's very strong.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I get the 3%. What's the 4% anchored to?
Again, that's based on, I think that's based on the projections that Richard's team has gotten thus far. Richard, we still can't hear you. I think he's giving you the sign that he's going to back out and come back in.
All right.
Yeah, so Richard will be the best one to answer that, as he's the one who gathered the data and brought in the information on the projections.
See if he's on. My only observation is in the numbers you guys sent over, 22-23 was up 3% from what you had for 21-22, but that was up 5 and change on the projection. So I just couldn't anchor the 4% to anything.
Okay.
I'm not saying I disagree with the 5-ish number. It feels about right, but it's not 4 unless the base is something different than the projection.
Okay. Richard, are you back?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Okay. Yeah. We get our sales and property tax projections from HDL. So they're projecting a 4.17 for 21-22 in the secured, but we also get a estimate from the Santa Clara County for the it's called the ERAF portion. It's the supplemental monies from the dissolved redevelopment agencies. And that's a different percentage altogether, because it's a whole different kind of calculation, not based on like property tax. Well, some of it's property tax increase, the increase, but it's also like a different allocations on the ERAF. So that kind of bumps up the the projection a little bit, like maybe 0.5%. But for the most part, it's a 4, roughly a 4 for the property tax in year 21-22.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on property tax? And of course, if you have questions, we can always come back to these slides as well. Some of the other assumptions we've made: sales tax remaining flat. I say remaining flat. It's going up very slightly. I compare it to, I grew up in the state of Kansas, and everybody says Kansas is very flat, but if you look at it, it has a very, very slight increase as it goes to the west. Not a significant amount of increase.
No,
Certainly.
John, no.
What's that?
I had a question, actually. This is a little bit confusing. You mean saying flat to the 2019 budget or the 2020 budget? Because your first assumption was that you're going back to those numbers.
Right. So we're going back. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Richard, do you have the exact numbers?
Yeah.
So if it's going back 2 years, then it's going to be a big jump over last year.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So looking at, I mean, it's flat, but as compared to last year, not 18-19.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a small increase over 2021. I guess that's kind of where we're getting the flat.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think a lot of the sales tax is going to be is unknown right now. We have guesses as to what's going to happen with the recovery, but we don't fully know how quickly and strongly the sales tax is going to rebound. Of course, sales tax does lag a bit in our actual receipts of it.
Correct. And we get quarterly reports from HDL, so we're monitoring that trend quarterly.
So as I say, it's a slow increase, slight increase from last year, but still relatively flat. It's not seeing a big increase like, say, a property tax would.
Okay.
Transient occupancy tax. This is our hotel tax. We think we're going to start seeing to begin a slow recovery as tourism starts picking back up. Folks are traveling and staying in hotels. This is one that we will really monitor throughout the year to see how it is recovering. If our projections are a little low or if they're too high, so we can monitor that. And then the last is we'll start to see our recreation fees return. This is the other area of revenue that really took a hit during COVID. It also took a hit because we tore down the community center, which was pre-COVID. And so as we start to come out of COVID and as the community center opens up and we start to return to some of that programming and offerings, we expect to start to see our recreation fees return. That will also be a slow process as well, and something that we'll monitor throughout the year. And certainly if the more restrictions that are lifted and the more we can do safely, the more opportunities there will be to get recreation fees. So those are some of the assumptions that we made in terms of revenues. These numbers are in the staff report. As you can see, we're still lagging a little behind from our 18-19 revenues. That largely is because of fees as well as loss in some of our tax revenues, particularly as we look at our TOT. You can see in 18-19, we were at about 3.2 million. For 21-22, we're projecting just $1 million. 22-23, 1.3 million. Of course, as I said, with property tax, if we see those numbers are coming in differently, when we come back for mid-year or even sooner if we need to, we can make adjustments on that as well. And then fees, again, recreation fees still way down, starting to bring those back up a little bit. A lot of that will depend on what can and cannot occur. The other area that we're seeing, which we'll talk about a little bit with when we talk expenditures, community development continues to be a very busy department. And so they are seeing increases in expenditures, but also increases in revenues in the first year. Any questions on revenues?
What's in the administrative fee line, John? I don't remember. The 918,500.
Yeah, it's not much. Business licenses would be in there. We have.
I'm sorry, John. There is a charge to the sewer fund for admin. That's a large portion of that.
So that explains why it's so stable. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Why does the police fee jump 100 grand? Oh.
Those are
my assumption. While Richard's kind of looking, my assumption is parking tickets.
That's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. During COVID, we were not enforcing parking downtown.
Okay.
So we're starting to do that again, and so that's where those revenues are coming from. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about some of our expenditure assumptions. As I mentioned, really starting with this budget, really starting to return to pre-COVID levels of service. As I mentioned.
Are you going to talk about the CARES revenue in later separately? The 2.8, that's a big number for obviously our budget.
Yeah, the American Rescue Plan. It is. I don't think I have it in the slide, but that is an area that we have we're starting to account for. Part of what we are doing is continually monitoring and figuring out exactly when we'll get those dollars, how we can use them, how we cannot use them, and whatnot. And so we are recommending including a transfer into the general fund of the $2.8 million. As you all know, we'll get half of it now and half of it in a year. And then we will transfer out a dollar amount into we set up a separate American Rescue Plan dollars fund, so that at a future date, the council can make a decision on what to do with all of those dollars, while not holding up the budget while we figure out exactly what we can do with them.
So, I mean, I would think that the whole point of the federal government sending us money is that they want us to spend it, right? I mean, the whole thing is to, so how will that work? That if we, so we're not counting on that being in our budget. So the expenses don't assume that we have that 2.8 coming in, correct? Right now?
So partially. So given the, and maybe that's a slide we need to have in here if I don't have it.
Before you go, we're going to spend the money, you just count all of it together as right.
Yeah, is show the general fund revenues and the expenditures together. Yeah, write a note to myself. And you're certainly right that the expectation from the federal government is that we will spend these dollars, and that is staff's intention as well.
I mean, I don't know if they'll put restrictions like saying if you don't have a shovel-ready project, we're going to give it to you, so.
Yeah, and that's part of the analysis that we're having done and working on is what can we use those dollars for? We have some ideas. Certainly, one of the areas that it can be used is to make up for losses in revenue. Which we are actually proposing to do a little bit in year one of the proposed budget. But what can we do with the remainder of the dollars? And what can we not do with them? We know we can't use them for pension liabilities. We can't use it for debt,
Yeah.
but there are other areas that we can use it. And that is certainly our intention, is as quickly as we can come back to the council with a recommendation on what to do with all of the dollars, so that the council can make determinations. And once the council has taken action, then we can adjust the budget as needed.
Excuse me,
and of
John.
course, yep.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, John, and you covered it fine, is that the preliminary rules that were sent out last week by the Department of Treasury have indicated that the most critical thing you can do is document your loss of revenue. It's absolutely critical, because you don't get a nickel to spend until you've been able to do that. And the first report's going to go out in August. So at this point, and they provide you a formula to actually determine what your revenue loss is for a 4-year period from 1920 to 23-24. And so we're currently going through those calculations. And if we don't do it, we may not get all the revenue. So we're working on that right now. But until we're able to lock that down, there's no guarantee, because they can actually pull the funds back if we can't justify it.
So maybe for tomorrow's council meeting, maybe you just table this. Otherwise, they're going to spend an hour, 45 minutes just spinning their wheels on this thing, and just tell them up front, we'll talk about this thing separately.
Yeah. And that was kind of, you've hit exactly on why we, for the most part, have kept those dollars separate, is so that we can focus on the budget. Once we have better understanding of these dollars, then we can make a recommendation and allocate them. Okay.
Yep.
So talking about the expenditure, some of the expenditure assumptions, as I mentioned, starting to return to pre-COVID levels of service. We are seeing legal costs continuing to increase. So we have included increases there. As I mentioned, we're seeing development costs continue to increase, but those are offset by matching revenues.
Hey, John,
Yes,
because in your memo says that as well. So where's the revenue? So it must be something other than in the development fees, right? So are you guys just counting park and lieu broadly in that? Because when I look at development fees, it's flat.
No, so
and then
this
you're spending. Yeah. So the revenues, the credit's got to be somewhere else other than what you sent us.
No, so
Building is up 24%.
Yeah, when
What's
I mentioned.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, when I mentioned development fees in this context, it's entirely general fund. So that does not include park and lieu or traffic impact fees.
That's right.
It is solely this line item here that said, that says CDD, which is my shorthand for community development. And you'll see we're projecting an increase of, let's see here, 480,000 over last year's budget.
7%. And you took spend up like, I mean, it's okay, but spend went up like 700 grand.
Right. And that's not entirely, probably because it's not entirely development fee related.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where the increase is in the CDD line item.
Okay. So actually that's maybe an opportune time to ask this question. So this is a department level bottoms up budget. I mean, you went to each department and asked them, hey, what will make you to succeed next year?
Yes.
Is that how this is done?
Yeah. So that's how we budget here in Los Altos. Is the departments provide their input on here is what we need in terms of expenditures. Mm-hmm. They also, the ones that generate revenue, we also work with them on what they think their revenue projections are going to be. But yeah, so it's built from the departments up. Okay.
And that's why you got that number that they want an increase of about 700K and just backfill in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And again, as I mentioned earlier, this budget is a preliminary budget, and as we are continuing to look at it, get input from you, refine the numbers, those numbers may, we may see we needed to increase our revenues in community development a bit more, or maybe our expenditures, are going up too much or whatnot. And so those will continue to be refined. The budget includes what we're calling known personnel costs. So these would be step adjustments for those employees who would be eligible for a step adjustment in the coming year, our healthcare costs, as well as any approved salary increases from an approved memorandum of understanding. It does not include those bargaining groups that do not have an approved MOU for the coming year. And the proposed budget does continue with recommending keeping 6 positions as frozen. This was a measure that was taken at the start of COVID to help control expenditures. And so we're recommending maintaining those 6 positions as frozen. Of course, as the year progresses and we monitor revenues, if things are changing, that may be something that is recommended for action, is to start unfreezing some of those positions because they are all critical to the organization. Okay. So those are some of the assumptions that are built into the expenditures of the budget.
Can you elaborate on, I thought there were like 17 positions we had unfilled. Have we filled 11 of them? That's why we still have 6 that are not?
I can't tell you as of right now, this moment, how many positions are empty. But 6 positions are frozen and the dollars have been taken out of the budget. The remainder are included in the budget and assumed that we will fill as we go. So every position that is not frozen, if it is vacant, we are in the process of recruiting for that position.
Okay.
Okay. The budget does include vacancy savings, just assumptions that throughout the year we'll have some vacancies, and so there will be some salary savings from that. It's not a high percentage, but again, that does not include these 6 positions.
Mm-hmm. And did you guys assume a constant CalPERS accrual rate?
Yeah, we get the CalPERS percentage cost, so to speak, from CalPERS every summer. So they give us those numbers way ahead of time, so we can apply that percentage cost to the salary.
Yeah. So do you guys have their projection for next year yet, or is
yes?
Okay.
No, not for 20. Well, we do have for 21, 22. That's when they give it. They have not provided us the 22, 23 yet, but they do in the report, in their actuarial report, they do give you kind of an estimated projection, but it's not it's not like all in their calculation, but they do give you kind of a rough estimate for the future years, and then that's the one we use. We apply that to our estimates.
Okay. Any other questions on expenditure assumptions?
So the legal cost is the one that was kind of surprising that it's even going up. I mean, is that going to be a surprise for the council? Obviously, they know this already, or they're the ones asking you to increase this. Can you elaborate on that?
Not without getting into too much detail. Some of the assumptions on legal costs are based on legal retainers, as well as trend data. I'll call it trend data from past years, where we've seen our legal costs going. As to whether the council will be surprised or not, I think you'll have to ask the council members if they are surprised. Certainly they know of some of the legal costs. But again, without getting into too much of litigation in other areas, the projection that we are including is based on a number of different factors.
It's like our biggest department expense.
It
So
is a lot.
John, would it be fair to say this is an well-educated guess?
Of what the cost will be?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, you're looking beyond what we can see on the legal, the cause of legal actions. And we shouldn't see that, but you can through the attorneys and so on. So I would categorize it as a really good educated guess.
Yeah, so we, again, not getting too much into the details.
Right.
We did work with our attorney in coming up with some of these projections, looked at historical data, trends, as well as, signed contracts, retainers.
Yeah, it sounds very reasonable.
Okay.
Not that we like the number, but it sounds like a reasonable approach at estimating the number.
Okay.
Mhm.
Looking at department budgets, again, we have been looking at comparing to 18-19. You'll see the numbers, costs have gone up significantly. Again, these all include those expenditure assumptions that I just went over. And so, I won't bore everybody by reading off the numbers, but you have them there. As was mentioned, the executive line sees a very significant increase, as well as the public safety. A big portion of the public safety is the fire contract increases.
Yeah. So your total, if we're trying to break even, we only get here if we put the extra one-time fund in there. So you already kind of spent it.
A portion of it, yes.
A portion.
Yeah, and that gets back to what we were saying here with particularly the TOT. We are projecting a loss of, just from 18-19 to this year, discounting, completely taking out the 2 years in between, a loss of 2.1 million in revenue, just for TOT. And as I mentioned, the recommendation is, well, here we go, is in the transfers in line item to include those as a transfer into the budget, then a transfer out of remaining dollars that are over the expenditures, so that those dollars can then be used once we have a plan as to how we are going to use those dollars.
So so you're fairly confident that we're going to get about 1.8 of that CARES, whatever the ARP, whatever it's called, that fund.
Well, again, as the interim city manager was mentioning, if as long as we are documenting everything, which we are going to do, and we can show the loss in revenue as well as what we are going to use the dollars for, we are very, very confident that we will get the $2.8 million probably in the next month or two, and then another 2.8 million 12 months later.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. The act says, lays out that these dollars are for the cities, and it would take, it'd take an act of Congress basically to take those dollars away from us. Again, as long as we have shown the loss in revenue, we've documented everything. They are our dollars.
So since you need that to be able to sort of balance the budget here, you may want to add a slide about the whole ERP as to how it's going to be guaranteed and how you have restrictions on where you can spend it, etc., so that it doesn't go all over the map in terms of what you can do with it.
Okay.
Start thinking of that as free money.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this, on the general fund, our assumptions, our projections?
So quick question, the repayment of debt isn't a general fund activity.
It is included, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, it is included in the transfers out
Correct.
line.
So it would be part of the 1.8 million.
Yes.
Yes. $789,000 of that is the debt for the community center and that that lingering COP debt service.
Okay.
So then the last question is of course, you know, how we fund CIP is the revenue over expenses, and we have zeros for the next 2 years.
Yes. And as indicated in the staff report, you know, the ideal is that dollars for the CIP are built into the expenditures line item here.
Yeah.
Based on our revenue projections and where we think we are going to be at, we have not included a transfer from the general fund to the CIP for either fiscal year.
So all we get is like the maintenance numbers. You have what, 5.8 and maintenance 5.7, right? And
in terms of the CIP,
yeah, just on projects around the town, you know, for maintenance we have some money, right? We don't have any money for new infrastructure.
well, so there is the general maintenance. There are dollars in the CIP right now,
Right.
and we are. Well, let me jump to the CIP. We are proposing $12.8 million of CIP dollars or CIP projects for year one of the 5-year CIP. So some of these are maintenance projects, or you know, annual maintenance projects. Some of those dollars are for new projects. Yeah.
So I was pointing out that we have a whole category of maintenance service expenses which are not considered CIP, right?
Correct. So those would be
Maintenance services.
Maintenance services.
Sorry, my screen just went completely black. Yeah, so those would be the maintenance services line item. That's the routine day-to-day maintenance of streets and parks, facilities and you know, the routine general maintenance, not the larger, you know, construction and other projects.
Right, pavement management.
Pavement management. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So topping of the streets would be under the maintenance.
Yes.
Yes and no. Some of those. So fixing, you know, fixing potholes, fixing cracks in pavement, that generally falls under the maintenance services under the general fund. Repaving a road, that would be a CIP.
Yeah. Slurry seals.
Slurry seals.
Slurry seals is maintenance. Something like the photograph shows would probably be a specific project.
Yeah, so the photo, yeah, that would be a specific project.
And then, John, I mean, we get money from the county to do projects, right? I mean, do we not include that in our budget usually? Or
so those dollars are included in the CIP. We get, I think we're projecting $500,000 from Measure B. We also get monies from SB1.
Yes, gas tax.
Gas tax.
Right.
All those dollars go into the CIP. and then are spent. Those come from those are included in the 12.8 million. So of the 12.8 million, about 5.6 of that is actual CIP dollars or general fund dollars. The remainder come from those special revenues that can only be used for dedicated specific types of projects.
Are you sure we're going to spend $12.8 million actually spend in the year? I don't think we've ever done that.
Well, again, the
We don't have the people to actually manage such a big project in the project.
Well, so yes and no. So I'll say we have spent that much money. I mean, we're spending $38 million on a community center, but discounting that, the 12.8 million, of course, that is allocated to the projects. Those projects then may last over a number of years. For example, I mean, the community center is a good example. $38 million that's been spent over a number of years. The 12.8 million includes includes sewer projects. It includes our street repaving projects. It does include some monies for facilities and other projects. Again, they may not all be spent in year one, but they are being appropriated and allocated for those projects.
So just to be clear, you're saying that we are going to actually allocate 12.8 of new monies to new projects, or is this a carry forward? Because we've obviously been working on projects that were allocated money before in this coming fiscal year.
No, these are new dollars.
New dollars that are being allocated to new multi-year projects.
Yes, correct.
So it's not all going to be spent in year one. But this is an allocation of 12.8 to new CIP projects.
Correct.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I'm a little bit, maybe some accounting method has changed or something. We've never done such a big allocation in a year.
Yeah, I'd have to look back and see what we've appropriated in past years. Of course, discounting the community center because that is its own unique project. But I'd have to go back and look at and see what we've allocated and appropriated in past years.
Okay. So if it's possible to show how much of that is actually going to get spent in the next two fiscal years, that would be helpful. Because if this is like a allocation for the next 3 to 5 years, then life can change in 2 years. So
yeah. Excuse me, in a minute I can pull up the chart that shows all of the projects, the entire 5-year CIP, and we can look at what projects are being recommended for funding in year one.
Okay.
So the CIP does recommend inclusion of 10 new projects. We're also recommending 8 projects come off of the CIP list. Those projects are either completed or deferred. And so they're recommended for removal from the CIP.
Who's recommending these projects? I mean, I thought that was completely in the council's purview as to what they wanted to add, what was ever added to the CIP list.
So you're correct that it is the council's prerogative as to what gets added, what gets taken off. Staff is making the recommendations based on council's priorities, what they have indicated as projects that they want to pursue, as well as projects that staff has identified as needing addressing.
Okay, maybe we want to clarify that these are the staff recommended 10 new projects.
Okay.
Everybody in the council has a favorite CIP project. So.
I think we all have our favorite CIP projects that we want to see done.
Well, we don't have a vote, so that's
that's true. Here you can see the list of projects that are being recommended for inclusion in the CIP. As I mentioned, some of these come directly from council objectives and priorities. Some of these are projects that have been identified by staff as needing addressing.
So here, this is where I had a little nitpick maybe, but as a financial exercise, I don't understand how you have a project without a dollar associated with it in your budget. You know, Halsey House, I mean, I think you have 2 or 3 like that. I mean,
yeah,
so come out or put a guesstimate number on it, because otherwise how do you balance your number?
Yeah, well, and the reason why we have added those is simply as a sign that the council has indicated that these are priorities. We don't know the scope of either of those projects. And so, you know, assigning a dollar amount is a difficult proposition when we don't know what the council's direction is going to be. Once the council has provided direction on these, we can include dollar amounts, you know.
John? John, excuse me. You might want to clarify what is meant by allocating in year 1 versus spending in year 1. And the fact that there are some projects such as the rec master plan and the general plan that are past the 2-year budget.
Right. Yeah, again, you know, and that's sort of to Kuljit's question of, you know, are we going to spend the $12.8 million in year 1? You know, because those dollars are there, it may be spent in year 1. It might be spent in year 2. Of course, we will only appropriate the dollars from year 1. So as Brad has mentioned, you know, year 3, year 4, those dollars are just estimates that are being placed there. So we can see about, you know, plan for the future.
So that was my point, right, John? That, I mean, we have like 60 projects. I mean, they're probably worth, you know, 100 million. So allocating $100 million of money that we don't have, you know, is of no consequence to the budget. But what's important is, you know, in the next 2 years, what do we think we're going to spend? So we can have a hard tack conversation about which CIP projects are actually going to get funded and we're going to write checks for. Because to say that we allocated 12 million, you know, in the past we've allocated 100 million. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter that if the project is number 59 on the list of 60, and if money allocated to it, it doesn't matter. You know, who's going to get there?
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe that's why that 8 number kind of looked a little odd to me. That, I mean, if you look at our whole CIP, I mean, we in the past allocated a lot of money to a lot of projects, but we never actually approved funding them.
Yeah.
Kaljit, I'm going to agree with you because I'm just going back to what I have, and if you go back to like 2018, we did our capital budget was 12 million, but then if you go back to what the projects were actually completed, it's a really nice summary. It was only 6 million.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that it's 12 million is probably high.
Yeah. So just, I mean, because it's a budget conversation, right? I mean, so let's just talk about, you know, money in, money out kind of a thing and keep it simple. But yeah, if they want to prioritize money and put money against some projects for the next 10 years, they don't really have an impact on the next 2 years budget. You know, it's fine. That's a valid exercise to do, but it'd be misleading otherwise.
Yeah. And, you know, and I agree. And some of the reasons why we include dollars in year 3, for example, or year 4, is to hold those as that's when we think we can actually get to it with the staffing that we currently have. You know, for example, the general plan, the staff that will work on the general plan will be working on the housing element update, and that will consume their time. And so we anticipate the housing element wrapping up in year 2 of the CIP. And so then once that is wrapped up, we can move to the general plan. As you are indicating, unless the dollars are there, we can't do any of it. And so that will be a conversation the city will need to have, particularly as we are not recommending transferring any dollars at this time from the general fund to the CIP.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, some projects are being recommended for removal. I won't go through those. You can see them there. And then there are some other aspects of the CIP that we undertook. We called the EOC out separately from the annual civic facilities project, excuse me. That those dollars had been included in there, but now that we are getting close to an actual EOC project, we're recommending creating our own separate, its own separate project. That will help us account for those dollars better, know exactly how much is being spent on the EOC. The other area that I really wanted to highlight is the streets improvement. The council has an objective, a priority of raising the standard of our pavement on our streets. And so the proposed CIP includes $3.5 million in funding in year one. This is the dollar amount that was identified by staff as needed in order to raise our pavement condition index to the desired level that the city council has indicated. So of course that is a big project. I will say either the last meeting or the upcoming meeting, the council is considering a contract for our street resurfacing project this coming year. And I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but it's between $2 to $3 million.
Great.
Okay.
Yep.
Following that, of course, the city council will go into their goals and objectives for the coming year. I will not have you go through that because those, of course, are for the council, really the council's discussion points and how those tie to the budget. In the staff report, we did include a list of the priorities, the projects. Those are color-coded to indicate which ones can be completed with existing staff and existing resources, which ones have been included in the budget in the upcoming budget, and which ones have not been included in the upcoming budget. And so the council will prioritize those as they go through their discussion tomorrow.
Okay. I was going to ask if any of the other commissioners have a comment about, how do you feel about the budget? I mean, to me, it feels like you've kind of sandbagged the revenue a little bit, but which is not a bad thing, because if you hadn't, I would have asked you to sort of do some scenario planning for a reduction in revenue. So I'm okay with you not doing that, but I think I was just going to open it up to the rest of the commissioners and see if they have any comments.
It's scary. I think it is fine given the uncertainty of the recovery. We all probably would guess that it's going to be better than we see right now, and clearly better than the budget. But I'd much rather not give anyone a big blank checkbook if you start to go the other way and over budget revenue, and then you spend it. So I'd rather come in with a little surplus mentality. I think it's fine the way it is.
Martha, I see you nodding, so.
Yeah, so I agree with both of what you've said. I would just like to add on that I feel like I have a little bit of an incomplete picture of that. I think you need maybe one or two more slides that are also going to include not only the general fund, but our enterprise fund. And I guess I'm just feeling like I don't see the whole picture yet in terms of our revenue over expenditures and what we have left to transfer out. I guess I just feel like there's a slide that could be included, an additional slide. That was my only comment.
My comment is I applaud the conservatism of the revenue. It's always easier to have more money than less. And I think that's good. I would like to see some detail, though, on the legal expenses, because that is becoming a major portion of the budget.
Maybe you break it out into fees versus other things. Are we
How
hiring
much are
an
fees?
army of lawyers, or are we paying somebody for a judgment?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, that's a bit of a tricky proposition to do. Yeah.
John?
Yes, sir. Please.
I think the simplest thing is this is not settlements or judgments. This is cost of paying retainers to handle current litigation, or estimates of costs for retainers of handling existing litigation.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
That's
very
good to
helpful.
know. Yeah, that's good to know, because it isn't estimated settlements, and that to me was a big question. So
Yeah.
I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Right, but guys, doesn't it begat the conservatism? It means you're not done yet.
Yeah. Plus.
Yeah, so I mean, look, 3 or 4 quick bullets. I mean, a lot of work. I think this is well done. It makes sense whether the revenue is conservative or not. I'd rather be on Gary's side of it. I do think whether it's legal or just look at the executive spend, it's almost 15% of general fund revenue. That's corrosive. That's not sustainable. Somebody's got to manage that down over time, because you just can't take an enterprise this small and have 15% of the revenue come right off the top. That's not if you run that out, it'll take more than the federal government to make that okay over time. Brad, I have lots and lots and lots of experience over the last 15 months dealing with the federal government on CARES Act money for many billions of dollars in the industries that got it. So I would, the approach you suggested, I would urge, the pattern is the same every time. It starts with elation. It starts with no problem, we're going to get you the money. Then there's an initial process to get the money. And then there's the FAQs, and then there's the inspector general comes around, and then you do the loop again. So you guys want to be careful about documenting, because they're going to be, everybody's urging of spending the money quickly will turn into, what did you spend it on and why are you right? And it's just beginning with people who've received the money on the industrial or commercial side. There's no reason to expect anything different on the municipal side. 2 specific balance sheet questions where there's just numbers in the back, Richard, I don't understand. One of my favorite accounts is Park in Lieu. And you guys show Park in Lieu going from mid-5s to 10 next year, and then you flatline it at about 10. So can you get 2 sentences on what's going on there?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. That was one of my questions to John Biggs, and I'll have to get his answer. I don't remember off the top of my head. There was some development he was talking about that it contributes to that.
Yeah.
Park.
So Richard, we've seen this movie before where the expectation was baked into a budget, and I think it didn't happen. So yeah. I would say, you need to have some sort of a methodology that's more than just hoping that some developer is going to actually pull a permit.
Yeah.
Not that you're spending it, so it's a balance sheet item, so that's fine, but I think clarity on that is good. But I really do want to go back to Tony's other comment, that 1.8 million that you're banking on from ARP or whatever it's called. I think it would be helpful to have a line item saying, if we didn't get it, what would we not spend? You can't just sprinkle it over the whole budget. You have to be able to quickly yank something out if you don't get that money.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I'm that far, but I may be a step broader than that, which is whoever said at the beginning is people ought to be cautioned that I think when you play this out, 3.5 million of the money you're expecting to get from the feds really is what they said it is. It's filling in revenue while you wait for it to recover. It's not a pot to go spread around town on projects or other things. And maybe revenue comes in better, it's okay. But you guys got a hole to fill for exactly the reason they're sending you the money, which is tot and sales tax need to come back, and maybe property tax will save the day like it always does in Los Altos, and that would be fine. And then the last one, and I'm hoping I beat Mark to this, but you guys also in your balance sheet back there, you have this CalPERS reserve just flatlining and sticking there. And I think we've suggested pretty strongly before that money really it either ought to be spent or go back into the pool. But I would ask you guys to seriously think about showing that money going out the door in the 21-22 budget, and that reserve being zeroed out and expended, and just make that the challenge. And whether it's this group or somebody else, is either we're going to use it to buy down CalPERS or not. Having it sit and earn 30 basis points in a cash account, I don't think is what the money was intended to do. That's just me.
Tony, I would agree with that. I think that's something we've talked about for several years.
Yeah.
And if it stays there in the pot, it'll get spent. If not this administration, the next or so. So let's pay it down. I mean, let's just work towards that.
And also the reason I poked at Richard on the CalPERS accrues rate, the guy who runs CalPERS published an op-ed, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, and the strong odor of it was discount rate's going to come down again. And the discount rate comes down, the unfunded obligation goes up. It's just math.
Yep.
And they seem to be out there, foretelling that that's what they're going to do again. So I would urge you to consider showing that money being used in 21-22.
Let's make sure that makes it to the minutes.
Thanks, Mark.
And Taljit, that's what I had.
Okay, thank you. I think those are all very good points from everybody. Mark, did you have something else, or you good?
Nope, just what I said.
Okay, super. Okay, so good feedback for you.
Yep. Chair, maybe before any more comments or we wrap up, do you want to see if there is public comment on this item?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 2 members of the public. Anybody has a comment?
I see Roberta has raised her hand.
Oh. Hi, Roberta, go for it.
Hi, everyone. So I did send a letter to John Maginot. I hope that you did receive it. I will not ask all the questions that I asked in the letter because, they were just kind of general concerns overall. But and you did address some of them in relationship to the CARES Act or the money that's potentially going to come in from the government, because I really don't want us to count our chickens before they're hatched. I'm just looking at my notes. I'm so sorry. I guess one of the questions that I had was when you show the budget, you show what the proposed, what you think the revenue is going to be, and then you show the proposed budget, and the proposed budget is always higher than the revenue. So I don't understand that. I mean, I understand that we might get money from someplace else, but I don't understand that methodology. Could somebody explain that to me? Because I'm really confused about that.
John, you want to take a shot at it? Roberta, the total revenue is 47.961570, and the expense is a little less than that, just a little shy of that. So you might be looking at a sub-revenue line when you say.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I might have been looking at the sub-revenue line. That's very possible. I'm not in the finance world. Thank you. I know you really asked some really good questions, and I do agree with you guys very much on taking a conservative approach, because we just don't know when the revenues are going to come back. Hopefully sooner than better, but you never know. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. We have Cindy and Councilman Weinberg. Any comments?
I'm not seeing anyone else raising their hand.
Okay, so what's the business here? We gotta vote on this and put a motion, or this is just for a presentation? What is your timeline? So is the question I asked you before.
Mm-hmm.
What are you suggesting to the council, that they step on it and approve this in 2 meetings?
So of course they're going to talk about it tomorrow. We will see what feedback, what direction, any actions that they might want us to, or changes that they might want us to make. Based on that, we will look to bring it back either the first or the second meeting in June, depending on the level of changes, so that they can consider it and adopt it.
Is tomorrow a full meeting or a study session where they can ask all kinds of random questions?
Just a study session, solely on the budget.
Okay.
Starting at 4 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, so you got some feedback from us. Hope that was helpful, and thank you very much. You guys
It was
did a good job pulling this together.
Yeah, it was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
That was excellent feedback. Thank you.
Yes, very much so.
Yes, thank you.
John, this is Mark. When it does come back for a final, I don't know if you're going to ask for the commission's approval, but for me personally, I would want to see that CalPERS funding in a line item in the budget before I would vote to approve.
Okay.
Personally. We did have a subcommittee meeting to just give John some feedback, but I know this budget has been job one for you, and you're shorthanded, so I can understand, but I think this is the year we need to sort of really get this done.
Need to do something with it.
Okay.
And we know the answer is urge your friends and relatives to book hotel rooms in Los Altos. That's our way out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shop Los Altos.
Yeah, shop Los Altos and stay in Los Altos.
Yeah, better yet, stay.
Yep.
Or more importantly, just invite some friends of yours to buy houses in Los Altos. You know,
that'll work. That'll work too.
Okay. Okay, so back to the agenda. Helen, we have anything else to cover, or are we good? Staff announcements.
As
any progress on hiring?
Yeah. So as sort of was just mentioned, budget has been job one. We've been working on a number of other aspects of it, including as we discussed, evaluating the American Rescue Plan, coming back with a plan and a recommendation on that. We are working on the recruitment for the finance director. That job has been posted. It's sent out. We have a recruiting firm who's helping us to identify good candidates. I believe it closes mid-June for applications. So hopefully in the next couple of months, you guys will no longer see me because you'll have somebody else here. The other aspect is, or other staffing issue, our account technician. As I've mentioned, we've been recruiting for that. We have identified somebody. They will start, I believe, end of June, first part of July. So we're excited to bring that person on board, provide a little bit more support and relief to our poor finance staff who have been overburdened with a lot of extra work. Other than that, I don't think I have any other staff announcements other than you have your list of future agenda items. June, looking at Park and Lieu, the policies around that, as well as the investment policy. So I thought the questions that were asked earlier today when we reviewed the investment report were very timely. And so have a review of the investment policy next month.
So just two things. One, I had a quick question about the system. Is it stable? I mean, are we seeing some elegant stuff happening, or are there still a bunch of spreadsheets? That's how this budget was done. I mean, are we able to actually utilize are you seeing the value of the new system?
We are getting there.
Okay.
It's a lot of work. We are getting there though. We did use some spreadsheets to help analyze the data, but we are getting there.
Okay. Second thing I was going to suggest is that this is a little bit timely, that I think, you know, our investment policy is the one where I think the commission actually did quite a bit of work in the past. And I was thinking that maybe that subcommittee can meet once before the June meeting, because I think there are probably things that, and I was hoping maybe John can help us on that, since you seem to have some understanding of this. It used to be Jim. Who else was Gary? You were on it, I think.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. And can John be on it with you? So maybe.
Sure.
I think if you guys can meet once, just even for an hour, because that's a big lever, you know, for us to sort of understand what we do, because the policy is where I think the commission can actually provide valuable insight, and especially somebody who has some background in it, that's really helpful.
Sure.
Sure. I'd be happy to.
Okay, so can I leave it with you, Gary, since you were the senior member of the subcommittee, to schedule a an hour call with the three of you to just review the investment policy a little bit. So when we come up for a conversation next time, you guys have, you know, a little bit more insight.
Sure.
Great.
Glad to do it. As the oldest guy around.
I did say
You said senior. You were very delicate, but it's true.
Okay, that'd be really great. Yeah, super. Thank you.
So it'll be John and myself and
Jim.
And Jim.
And Jim. Okay, great.
And Gary, feel free to reach out and we can help.
Yeah, who should I come back to for that? Helen?
You can talk to me, to John.
Okay, John, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Helen may end up doing all the work, but you can talk to me first.
Thanks, Helen. Okay.
Okay, otherwise, anything else pressing that we want to discuss in June? I mean, this is quite a bit, but I think the financial policy may not have much that we're changing, but the investment policy, I think, may be worth looking at in more detail.
I agree. Good meeting. Covered a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, meeting adjourned.
All right, good luck
Thank
tomorrow,
you.
guys.
Thank you all. And thank you for the feedback. and
Thank
input.
you.